Spring in Bend, Oregon, arrived as it always did, a gentle thaw that washed the landscape in vibrant life. The heavy snow on the Cascade Mountains began to melt, and the scent of juniper and pine filled the air. It was a season of renewal, a time when the heavy, grey cloak of winter was lifted from people's faces, replaced by the light of hope. But for Ethan and Sarah Clark, this spring was more painful than any they had ever known. Their 6-month-old daughter, Lily, was born with congenital paraplegia. The doctors had told him she would likely never walk. During birth, there was a period of insufficient oxygen supply. The specialist had explained, his voice gentle but firm. It caused a spinal cord injury, resulting in paralysis in her lower body. With modern medicine, a full recovery, honestly, it would take a miracle. The doctor's words fell like stones on Ethan and Sarah's hearts. They held their daughter in their arms, their bodies whole but their spirits shattered into a million pieces. Lily was a happy baby, with large, curious eyes and chubby cheeks. She seemed completely unaware of her condition. Of course, she was only 6 months old, but her innocent smiles, the ones that should have brought them joy, only tightened the knot of grief in their chests. Ethan worked as an architect, his days spent drafting blueprints for other families' futures while his own felt impossibly bleak. Sarah had given up her job as an elementary school teacher to dedicate herself to Lily's care. The financial strain deepened their emotional anguish, creating a chasm of despair that grew wider with each passing day. Sarah often cried silently at night, muffling her sobs so she wouldn't wake the family. Ethan wanted to comfort his wife, but he was drowning in the same sea of pain. "Did we do something wrong?" Sarah asked quietly one evening. Ethan slowly shook his head. "It's not our fault, it's just the hand we were dealt." They tried to console each other, surviving one day at a time, but the small flame of hope they held onto was flickering, growing weaker and weaker. Then, one day, Ethan came home from work with a puppy. A colleague had given it to him, a tiny Border Collie. A fluffy ball of black and white fur. "We were going to keep him," his co-worker had said, "but it turns out my wife is allergic. I couldn't bear the thought of taking him to a shelter. I was wondering, could you give him a home?" Ethan hesitated for a moment. With the overwhelming demands of caring for a sick child, could they really handle a puppy? But the puppy's dark, wet eyes and the hopeful wag of its tiny tail captured his heart. He named him Star and made the decision to bring him home. "Sarah, I'm sorry, I brought home a puppy." Sarah stared at Ethan, her expression a mixture of surprise and exhaustion. She looked at the little dog for a long moment, then let out a deep sigh. "An animal is the last thing we need right now," she said softly, "but we can't just abandon him, can we?" She didn't say much more, just gave a quiet nod. She was physically and emotionally drained from caring for Lily and had no energy left for a puppy. But she saw a spark of life return to her husband's eyes for the first time in months. And for that reason alone, she had to accept Star's presence. Star was a special dog from the very beginning. Like most puppies, he was energetic and playful. But around Lily, he was always calm and gentle, moving with a caution that suggested he understood the baby's fragile state. On the first night, Star sat motionlessly outside Lily's nursery door. When Ethan tried to pick him up and move him to another room, Star kept returning to the same spot. "What's wrong with him?" Sarah asked. Ethan shrugged. "Maybe he just feels comfortable here." In the end, they let Star sleep in the hallway outside Lily's room. When Sarah woke in the middle of the night to check on the baby, Star was still there, sitting vigil, his eyes fixed on the door. From the next day on, the bond between Star and Lily grew even deeper. Whenever Lily was lying on a blanket on the living room floor, Star would be right beside her. Sometimes he would gently lick her face, other times he would simply lie next to her. A silent, furry guardian, Lily seemed to love him, too. She would smile whenever he came near, reaching out with her tiny hands to touch his soft fur. At first, Sarah found the sight heartwarming, but gradually, an unexplainable anxiety began to creep in. "He seems obsessed with Lily," she told Ethan. "It's a little strange, don't you think?" Ethan understood his wife's concern but saw no real problem. "Isn't that what loyal dogs do? They have a protective instinct." "No, it's something different," she insisted. "It's almost like he's trying to fix her." Ethan couldn't help but chuckle. "Fix her? Sarah, how is a dog supposed to fix a child? I think your imagination is running a little wild." But Sarah's words were not just a flight of fancy. Every night, Star would lick Lily's feet. At first, they thought it was just a strange canine habit. But Star was persistent, always licking the same spot, Lily's paralyzed legs. And even more strangely, After Star finished, Lily's toes would sometimes tremble with a faint spasm. One afternoon, Sarah witnessed it happen and called for Ethan in astonishment. "Ethan, come quick, Lily," she moved her toes. Ethan rushed in, half believing, half skeptical. By the time he arrived, Lily was lying still as usual, her feet motionless. "I saw it," Sarah insisted, "right after Star licked them." As much as he wanted to believe her, the doctor's grim prognosis was etched in his mind. It might have just been a reflex. "Sarah, we want this so badly that maybe we're starting to see things." Sarah bit her lip, convinced that what she had seen was real, but even she was beginning to doubt herself. Had Lily's toes really moved? Or was it just a mirage born from her own desperate hope? That night, Sarah decided to watch him more closely. After putting Lily to bed, she hid in a corner of the nursery, determined to observe everything. As usual, Star lay down beside Lily's crib. Once the baby was in a deep sleep, he quietly got up and padded over to her feet. Sarah held her breath. Star began to lick Lily's paralyzed legs, slowly and methodically. For the first few minutes, nothing happened, but then, after about 10 minutes, Sarah witnessed something unbelievable. Lily's toes, faintly but unmistakably, moved. "How is this possible?" she whispered, tears streaming down her face. They were tears of hope. The next morning, she told Ethan everything she had seen. He was still doubtful, but seeing the unwavering conviction in Sarah's eyes, he decided to believe her. "Okay," he said, "tonight, I'll watch with my own eyes." That night, Ethan saw it too. He watched as Star licked Lily's feet, and then he saw the tiny flicker of movement in her toes. He was overcome with a mixture of shock and elation. He looked at Sarah, his voice trembling. "How?" "I don't know," she whispered, "but this is a miracle." They decided to report the incredible change to their doctor. The physician was, understandably, skeptical. "It's most likely a natural reflex action," he said. "It doesn't necessarily mean her motor functions are recovering." But Ethan and Sarah refused to give up. They recorded a video on their phone showing Star licking Lily's feet and the subsequent movement in her toes. And they presented it as proof. The doctor watched the footage, his professional composure visibly shaken. "This is a truly difficult phenomenon to explain," he admitted, "but something is clearly happening. We need to run more detailed tests." Lily was admitted to OHSU in Portland for a comprehensive examination. After a team of specialists carefully monitored her condition, they discovered something astounding. Faint nerve activity was being detected around her spinal cord. It was a change that even the doctors couldn't explain. "To be perfectly honest, a case like this is unprecedented," the lead neurologist confessed. "Theoretically, this shouldn't be possible, but your daughter's nerves are, for some reason, being reactivated." One doctor suggested that Star's saliva might contain a special enzyme or chemical compound. But even that didn't fully explain it. This was something beyond the grasp of modern medicine. It was a true miracle. Ethan and Sarah's hearts swelled with hope. Every day, they encouraged Star to lick Lily's feet, and they watched as her condition improved day by day. What started as a flicker in her toes soon spread to her ankles. And then her knees. The progress was slow but steady. 3 months after Star started his nightly ritual, Lily was able to consciously move her leg for the first time. It was a tiny movement, but to Ethan and Sarah, it was the most beautiful sight in the world. She moved her leg, Sarah cried, tears of joy streaming down her face. Ethan couldn't hold back his own tears. He lifted Lily into the air. "That's my girl, you did it. Lily, you're so strong." Star watched them from the corner, his tail wagging proudly. The story spread like wildfire. The miracle dog who healed a paralyzed child began to make headlines. It started as a small local news story, but soon it captured national attention. People across the country were moved by the story, and news vans began to camp outside the Clarks' home. Researchers also took a keen interest. A team from OHSU's School of Medicine began to analyze Star's saliva. They discovered an unknown protein component, hypothesizing that it might promote the regeneration of damaged nerve tissue. This dog's saliva contains a truly unique substance, the lead researcher announced. "It's a compound we haven't fully identified yet. Further study is needed to understand how it stimulates nerve regeneration." They also studied Star's DNA. The results showed that he had genetic markers that were different from a typical Border Collie. His lineage was traced back to a specific, isolated line of working dogs bred in the Appalachian Mountains, suggesting that the unique environment of that region might have influenced his genetics. But a scientific explanation wasn't enough. Why Star had so precisely and intensively licked Lily's paralyzed legs, and why it had worked, remained a mystery. Some called it a coincidence. But for Ethan and Sarah, it was an undeniable miracle. Lily's recovery continued. By the time 6 months had passed, she could not only move her legs but could also stand for a few moments with support. Her physical therapists were amazed at her incredible rate of progress. "I've never seen a case like this," one therapist said. "Her recovery speed is unbelievable. At this rate, she might one day be able to walk on her own." Those words gave Ethan and Sarah even more hope. They dedicated themselves to Lily's physical therapy, and Star continued his nightly duty without fail. Their house, once filled with despair, was now overflowing with hope and joy. One day, Sarah looked at Star, tears welling in her eyes. "Without you, we would still be lost in the darkness." As if he understood her words, Star wagged his tail and licked her hand. On the day Lily celebrated her first birthday, they threw a small party. Family and friends gathered to celebrate her birth and her miraculous recovery. During the party, Lily did something that stunned everyone. She grabbed onto Ethan's hand and, while wobbly, took a few steps. Sarah let out a cry of pure joy. Everyone watched, their faces filled with awe. Lily, unsteady but determined, took a few more steps, a huge smile spreading across her face. Star barked loudly, expressing his own happiness. That night, Ethan stood by the window, looking up at the night sky. The stars glittered brightly, as if reflecting the clarity and hope in his heart. He replayed the image of Lily walking in his mind and smiled. Miracles really do exist. Sarah came and stood beside him. "Yes, they do," she said, "and our family got to experience one." They looked at each other and smiled. Just then, Star came and sat at their feet. Ethan bent down and gently stroked his head. "You brought hope back to our family, boy." As if he understood, Star quietly wagged his tail. Together, the three of them looked out at the star-filled sky, which seemed to shine even brighter, as if blessing their story. Time passed in a blur. Lily grew stronger, and by the time she was 2, she could walk a few steps on her own. Her case became known in the medical community as the Lily case, and several papers were published about it in medical journals. Researchers continued to study the special components in Star's saliva, and their work became a crucial lead in developing new treatments for spinal cord injury patients. But for Ethan and Sarah, the most important thing was their daughter's smile. She still couldn't run around freely like other children, but she explored the world in her own way, and Star was always by her side, protecting her. When Lily turned 3, another change came to their lives. Sarah became pregnant with their second child. They were overjoyed, but also felt a flicker of anxiety. What if their second child was born with the same problems as Lily? The thought weighed heavily on their minds. But Star, as if sensing their fear, began to show a gentle interest in Sarah's growing belly. He would often rest his head on it, as if he were trying to protect the unborn baby inside. Seeing this, Ethan and Sarah felt a strange sense of peace. "Star is watching over us," Ethan said. "I'm sure everything will be fine this time." 9 months later, Sarah gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him Noah. He was perfectly healthy, with no complications. Their family now felt even more complete. Lily was a doting older sister, and her condition continued to improve. She could now walk on her own with the help of leg braces. The doctors said she would continue to grow and get stronger. Lily's case is truly a medical miracle. Her doctor told them, "We still don't fully understand how it was possible. But one thing is certain, this child has given all of us hope." Star was now getting older. His movements slower than before, but he remained a loyal guardian to Lily and Noah. He would watch over their rooms every night until both children were fast asleep. Ethan often looked at Star and wondered, how could this one small life bring such a massive change to our family? It was a question he might never answer, but he was filled with nothing but gratitude. One evening, Lily asked Star, "Star, when I was sick, why did you help me?" Star just wagged his tail and gently licked her face. Lily smiled and hugged him tightly. "It's a secret, isn't it? Well, thank you, I love you, Star." The story of how Star helped Lily walk became known across the country, giving hope and courage to countless people. It was an especially great comfort to other families in similar situations. One mother, who heard Lily's story, contacted Ethan. Her son also had a spinal cord injury and couldn't walk. "We need hope, too," she said. "How can our son recover like Lily?" Ethan answered honestly, "I don't know exactly how it happened, but the one thing I've learned is that you must never give up hope. Miracles can happen in the most unexpected ways." After that, several other families reached out. They shared their stories and encouraged one another. Eventually, Ethan founded a non-profit organization called Wings of Hope, dedicated to supporting children with disabilities and their families. When Lily turned 5, she started kindergarten. At first, she had a hard time fitting in. Some of the children made fun of her slightly clumsy walk. But Lily was strong. She told her story with pride. "When I was born, my legs couldn't move," she explained to her classmates. "But my dog, Star, helped me, and now I can walk." The other children were amazed and curious. They bombarded her with questions and gradually accepted her as a friend. Her teacher even used her story as part of a special lesson for the class. Lily's story teaches us something very important. The teacher said, "We are all different, and those differences are what make us special." One day, the kindergarten held a pet day. The children brought their beloved pets to school to show them off. Lily was thrilled to bring Star. "This is my dog, Star," she announced proudly. "He's a magic dog. He licked my legs, and that's how I can walk now." The children looked at Star with wonder. "Is he really magic?" one asked. Lily nodded confidently. "He has a special magic in his tongue. A magic that heals." Of course, the adults simply thought it was a child's wonderful imagination. But when Sarah came to pick Lily up, her teacher told her something interesting. Lily introduced Star to the class today. The children were so excited. And a strange thing happened. One of the boys fell and scraped his knee. And Star went right over and licked the cut. The boy said that, strangely, the pain went away almost immediately. Sarah was stunned. Was it just a coincidence? Or did Star truly possess some kind of healing power? She told Ethan about it. And they once again pondered the uniqueness of their dog. "Maybe Star really is something special," Ethan said, "whether we can understand it or not." Time passed, and Lily entered elementary school. She could now walk almost as well as any other child, only needing minor assistance when walking for long distances. Her new teacher knew her history and watched over her with a warm heart. "Lily is a child who brought a special miracle to our school," she would say. Noah grew up healthy and active, always trying to help his big sister. The two were incredibly close, sharing a deep bond. Star had become a senior dog. His coat was whiter, his movements much slower, but his gaze was as sharp as ever, and he continued to watch over Lily and Noah with boundless love. One afternoon, Sarah noticed that Star was sleeping longer than usual. Worried, she called Ethan. "Honey, something's wrong with Star. He's sleeping all the time and barely eating." Ethan shared her concern. "I'll take him to the vet tomorrow." That evening, Lily begged her parents to let Star sleep in her room. She could sense he wasn't feeling well and wanted to comfort him. She gently stroked his head. "Don't worry, Star," she whispered, "just like you helped me. I'm going to help you now." Star weakly wagged his tail and licked her hand. His eyes were filled with a deep, peaceful love. Lily stayed by his side all night. She read stories to him and sang him lullabies. As Star drifted off to sleep, Lily curled up beside him and fell asleep too. The next morning, Lily woke up first. She looked at Star. He was lying peacefully, but he wasn't breathing anymore. He had quietly crossed the rainbow bridge during the night. "Star?" Lily whispered. "Star, wake up." But there was no response. A sob escaped her lips, and she called for her parents. When Ethan and Sarah rushed in, they knew immediately what had happened. Sarah hugged Lily tightly while Ethan gently checked Star's body. "He's gone to heaven, sweetie," Ethan said, fighting back his own grief. Lily couldn't stop crying. "Why did he have to go? He helped me, but I couldn't save him." Sarah stroked her daughter's hair. "Lily, Star lived a long, happy life with us, and he knew how much you loved him. He passed away peacefully." That day, they made a small grave for Star in the backyard. Lily placed his favorite toy and a picture of herself in front of the gravestone. "You gave me the miracle of walking," she whispered. "I will never, ever forget you." Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. "Star will always live on in our hearts. And the miracle he showed us will continue on, too." The sadness lingered for a long time. But as time passed, they began to remember Star with smiles instead of tears. The change and happiness he had brought to their lives would be forever etched in their hearts. A year later, Lily prepared a special project for her school's science fair. She presented the story of Star and the miracle he had brought her. "My dog, Star, was special," she said to the audience. "He healed my paralyzed legs. Scientists still haven't figured out the exact reason, but they say there was something special in his saliva. But I believe it wasn't just science. I believe it was the power of love and trust." Lily's presentation was deeply moving, and she won first prize at the science fair. But for her, the most important thing was sharing Star's story with so many people. Her teacher told her afterward, "Lily, your presentation was truly wonderful. You gave us all hope." Lily smiled. "Star gave me hope. I just wanted to pass it on." After that, Lily began to read every book she could find about animals. She became fascinated by the special abilities they possessed and the impact they had on humans. Her dream was to become a veterinarian and save animals. Ethan and Sarah supported her dream wholeheartedly. They hoped that the miracle Lily had received from Star could now be shared with others through her. Noah, too, was deeply inspired by his sister's story as he grew. He hadn't spent much time with Star, but he had learned a great lesson through his legacy. "When I grow up," he declared, "I'm going to help people. Just like my big sister. Just like Star." Several more years passed, and Lily became a middle schooler. She could now walk and even run just like any other kid. Doctors still called her recovery a miracle. One day, her science teacher approached her with a special proposal. A new study on spinal cord injury recovery was being conducted at a major university research hospital, and the researchers wanted to study her case. "Lily, your case is medically invaluable," her teacher said. "If you agree, your story could give hope to countless other patients." Lily agreed without hesitation. If her experience could help others, she was more than willing to cooperate. She and her parents visited the research lab at the university hospital. There, she underwent several tests and told the lead professor her story in detail. The professor listened intently, then fell into deep thought. "We have been so focused on the specific enzymes in the dog's saliva," he mused, "but perhaps there is something more. The special bond between an animal and a human, and the effect it can have on physical healing. This is a truly fascinating field of study." Lily agreed with his words. "Star wasn't just a dog. He understood me. He wanted to help me. I think that was the most important thing." The research continued, and a few years later, the professor's team published a groundbreaking paper titled "The Neurological Effects of Animal-Assisted Therapy." The paper garnered worldwide attention and had a significant impact on the development of new treatment methods. By the time Lily entered high school, she had grown into a completely healthy teenager. She even joined the school's track team and, astonishingly, excelled. It was as if her body, after a long struggle, had become even stronger. Her dream had also become clearer. She wanted to study both veterinary and human medicine, becoming a specialist in animal-assisted therapy. "I want to share the gift that Star gave me with others," she said. "I want everyone to know how much animals can change our lives." Ethan and Sarah fully supported their daughter's dream. They were incredibly proud of the journey she had undertaken, from a difficult beginning to an amazing future. Noah, too, was cultivating his own dream. He was drawn to animal behaviorism, particularly interested in the communication methods between animals and humans. Every so often, the family would visit Star's grave in the backyard together. A small dogwood tree now grew there, one Ethan had planted in Star's memory. Every spring, it bloomed with beautiful white flowers. "It's been so many years since Star left us, but his influence is still here," Sarah said, sitting beneath the tree. Ethan nodded. "Our family learned the true meaning of hope and love because of him. And that lesson will stay with us forever." Lily knelt before the gravestone and whispered, "Star, I still think about you all the time. Because of the gift you gave me, I can now run toward my own dreams. Thank you, my dearest friend." That night, Lily had a dream. In it, she was running through a vast, open field with Star. He was young and healthy again, his black and white coat shining in the sunlight. They laughed and ran together, free and boundless. When she woke up, there were tears in her eyes, but her heart was filled with warmth. She looked out the window. The night sky was filled with countless stars. "You really did become a star, didn't you?" she whispered with a smile. At that moment, one star seemed to shine brighter than all the rest. Lily knew it was a coincidence, but in her heart, she wanted to believe it was a sign from Star, her special friend, the little dog who brought her a miracle. By the time Lily went to college, her story had been published as a book, titled Star's Miracle. It gave hope and courage to many people, especially offering great comfort to families in similar situations. At the book launch party, Lily gave a speech. "My story is not just a story of a miracle," she said. "It is a story of love, hope, and trust. Star taught me not only how to walk, but also the meaning of life and the joy of helping others. I sincerely hope this book will be a beacon of hope for many." Ethan and Sarah watched their daughter from the audience, tears quietly streaming down their faces. They realized once again what a strong, beautiful soul she had grown into. Noah, too, looked at his sister with pride. He was now a young man, chasing his own dreams just like her. After the event, an elderly man approached Lily. He was walking with the help of a cane. "Hello, Ms. Clark. I was deeply moved by your story. I, too, was paralyzed from the waist down after an accident long ago. The doctors told me I would never walk again. But I didn't give up. And now, here I am, walking, with the help of a cane, of course. Lily was touched by his story. That's truly amazing. How was that possible for you? The old man smiled. I had my own star. Not a dog, but my wife, who never gave up on me and supported me through everything. Her love and dedication are what got me back on my feet. Reading your book, I realized once again that all miracles begin with love. Lily took the old man's hand. They do, she said. Miracles begin with love. Stars love, my parents love, and believing in myself. That's what helped me walk. That night, Lily visited Star's grave again. She placed a copy of the published book in front of it. Star, our story is a book now, she whispered, so many people will know what a special dog you were. I hope you're proud. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the dogwood tree. The sound was like a soft reply. She understood completely now. The miracle wasn't just about regaining the ability to walk. The true miracle was understanding the power of love and passing that hope on to others. And the love and hope that Star had taught her were now spreading throughout the world through her. That was Star's true legacy. Lily looked up at the sky. Countless stars were shining, and one of them was shining brighter than all the rest. She whispered toward it. My forever friend, the miracle you gave me is still going on. Story 2, The Protector Named Ghost. The Chicago winter was always a brutal, bone-chilling affair. The frigid air that swept off Lake Michigan seemed to freeze not just the city, but people's hearts as well. For David Chen, however, the cold that enveloped his soul had nothing to do with the season. It had been nearly a year since his wife, Yuki, was killed in a sudden car accident, and the chill of grief had never left him. He was raising their 5-year-old son, Leo, alone, navigating a life that felt void of a future. David worked as a programmer for a tech company. His days spent staring at a sterile monitor, typing lines of code from morning until night. The routine was grueling, but he had Leo. His son's laughter was the only light in his colorless world. But in recent weeks, even that light had begun to dim. Daddy, the dark is scary, Leo whispered at the breakfast table one morning. David's heart ached as he looked at his son's pale face. Leo hadn't been sleeping well lately. The dark circles under his eyes made his small face look even more fragile. Are you having bad dreams? David asked. Leo shook his head slowly. He comes into my room every night, and he growls. He was Ghost, the rescue dog they had recently welcomed into their home. After their previous dog, a beloved retriever, had passed away, David adopted Ghost from a shelter to help ease Leo's loneliness. A large Great Pyrenees with a thick coat of pure white fur. Ghost was initially a quiet and gentle dog, and seemed to be getting along well with Leo. But recently, Leo had started expressing a deep fear of Ghost right before bedtime. Ghost is a good boy, Leo, he would never hurt you. David tried to reassure his son, but the look of terror remained in Leo's eyes. He does, Daddy, I'm telling the truth. Okay, David said, his voice softer. How about this? Tonight, I'll sleep in your room with you. I'll see for myself if Ghost really growls. Leo nodded, a small wave of relief washing over his face. David smiled and ruffled his son's hair, but a vague unease stirred within him. Why would a child suddenly become so afraid of a gentle dog? That evening, David left work early and had dinner with Leo. Ghost lay quietly under the table. Observing them, David watched the dog's behavior carefully, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. After dinner, David gave Leo a bath, read him a story, and tucked him into bed as usual. You're really sleeping here tonight, Daddy? Leo asked, pulling his blanket up to his chin. I am. A dad always keeps his promises. Leo seemed to relax and closed his eyes. David lay down in a sleeping bag on the floor next to his son's bed, waiting for the sound of his breathing to deepen. The room was silent, and the view of Chicago's skyline from the window was, as always, cold and indifferent. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight. David had dozed off without realizing it, but was startled awake by the sense of something entering the room. Through the crack in the door, he saw Ghost slip inside silently. The dog first scanned the room, then slowly padded toward Leo's bed. David held his breath, watching. As Ghost neared the side of the bed, a low growl began to rumble in his chest. The sound was deep and menacing, and it was undeniably coming from Ghost. David was about to sit up, angry and confused, when he noticed something strange. Ghost wasn't growling at Leo. His gaze was fixed intently under the bed, directed at the deep shadows there. An icy chill ran down David's spine. Cautiously, he rose from the floor and crept to Ghost's side. Crouching down, he peered under the bed. At first, he saw nothing but darkness. But as his eyes adjusted, his breath caught in his throat. Huddled beneath the bed was the shape of a man. For a split second, David was paralyzed by fear, but the instinct to protect his son surged through him. He immediately reached over and scooped the sleeping Leo into his arms. The shadow under the bed began to move. David lunged for the light switch and flipped it on, flooding the room with light. A large man scrambled out from under the bed. In his hand, he held the sharp, metallic glint of a knife. "Don't move," the man hissed. Ghost continued to growl, positioning himself between the intruder and David's family. David, clutching Leo tightly, frantically tried to think, how was this possible? Their apartment building had a 24-hour security system. It was supposed to be safe. "What are you doing here?" David asked, his voice trembling. The man didn't answer, instead taking a slow step toward them. Ghost's growling intensified into a ferocious snarl. David backed away, holding his son even tighter. The tension in the room was unbearable. Suddenly, Ghost lunged, leaping at the man with a powerful roar. David seized the opportunity. He sprinted out of the room, slammed the emergency alarm button by the front door, and tumbled into the hallway with Leo still in his arms. A deafening siren blared through the building. "Help! Somebody! Help!" David screamed at the top of his lungs. Doors creaked open as neighbors poked their heads out. A security guard, alerted by the alarm, was already running toward their apartment. The 10 minutes it took for the police to arrive felt like an eternity. When they finally stormed the apartment and arrested the intruder, David was still on the floor in the hallway, holding Leo and shaking uncontrollably. Ghost had been safely secured by the security guard, having sustained only minor scratches in the struggle. "That dog saved your son's life," a police officer said, gesturing toward Ghost. "The suspect confessed he's been watching your apartment for several days. He was targeting your son." David felt the blood drain from his face. If he had dismissed Leo's fears, if he had told him the growling was just his imagination, if he hadn't stayed in his room that night, the thought was horrifying. Ghost was protecting him, David murmured, his voice cracking. "Sometimes dogs can sense danger far better than we can," the officer said. That dog knew an intruder was hiding nearby every single night. From that night on, David Chen's life changed. He installed a more robust security system, and Ghost became the family's hero. Leo was no longer afraid of him. Instead, Ghost became his closest friend and his trusted guardian. "Thank you, Ghost," David would whisper every night, stroking the dog's massive head. "If it weren't for you," he could never bring himself to finish the sentence. The alternative was too terrifying to imagine. Time passed, and Leo grew up healthy and happy. The incident left David with an important lesson. Sometimes, what you see on the surface is not the whole story, and the quietest presence can be the strongest protector. And above all, family is not just about blood ties, but about love and devotion. The Chicago winters were still harsh, but David Chen's home was now filled with warmth. Leo, David, and Ghost, a new family, protecting each other, living together. Sometimes, the darkest nights truly do lead you to the brightest light. Weeks after the incident, as the police investigation progressed, a series of shocking truths came to light. The intruder was not just a common burglar. He was an industrial spy with connections to a rival of the tech firm where David worked. He had been trying to steal the code for a new system David was developing. But even more shocking was the fact that he had been planning to take Leo hostage. As soon as David learned this, he resigned from his job. No matter how good the salary, it wasn't worth risking his son's safety. He found a new, fully remote position that allowed him to spend more time with Leo. "Daddy, why aren't you going to the office anymore?" Leo asked one morning. David smiled and stroked his son's hair. "Daddy's going to work from home now. That means I can play with you a lot more." Leo's face lit up, but deep inside, David was still plagued by anxiety. Was the intruder really working alone? Were there other dangers lurking? He glanced at Ghost, who was watching him intently, as if reading his mind. "Thank you for protecting our family, Ghost," David whispered. That afternoon, seeking more information, David visited the local police precinct. The lead detective, a man named Miller, invited him into his office. "Mr. Chen, we've identified the intruder," Detective Miller said. "His name is Marcus Thorne, age 39. He has a prior record for corporate espionage." "Do I know him?" Detective Miller shook his head. "It doesn't seem you've ever met. However, we have strong reason to believe he was hired by a competitor with ties to your former company." David sighed. The system he had been developing was a major project, crucial to the company's future. He could understand a rival wanting the technology, but to endanger a child to get it? "Detective, there's one more thing I need to ask," David said. "Why my son? Why him specifically?" Detective Miller's expression hardened. It seems Thorne wasn't just after the code. He may have held a personal grudge against you. David was confused. He had no memory of anyone named Marcus Thorne. Why would the man hate him? What do you mean? Detective Miller opened a drawer, pulled out a photograph, and handed it to David. It showed a younger Marcus Thorne standing intimately with a woman. David's breath caught in his throat when he saw the woman's face. It was Yuki. I don't understand, David stammered. Thorne and your wife, Yuki, were in a relationship back in college. The detective explained carefully. It's possible he never got over the fact that she married you. David stared at the photo, completely stunned. Yuki had never once mentioned an ex-boyfriend. To think that this secret was hidden behind their 7 years of marriage was devastating. We found evidence that Thorne was stalking you after your wife's accident. Detective Miller added, targeting your son wasn't just for leverage. It may have been a form of revenge. David's head spun. The sudden accident, now this. A horrifying thought crossed his mind. Maybe none of it was a coincidence. Yuki's accident, could he be connected to it? David asked, his voice trembling. Detective Miller was silent for a moment. We don't have any hard proof yet, but we are pursuing that line of investigation. On the drive home, David's mind was in turmoil. He struggled to accept that Yuki had a past she never told him about, and that this past was now threatening their son's life. When he arrived at the apartment, Leo was already asleep. A neighbor, who had been watching him, greeted David at the door. Leo slept soundly, she said with a smile, and Ghost stayed right by his side, watching over him the whole time. David thanked her profusely and went to Leo's room. His son was indeed sleeping peacefully, and Ghost was lying on the floor by the bed, ever vigilant. The dog acknowledged David's presence with a quiet thump of his tail. David knelt and stroked his head. You have to keep Leo safe. Ghost, you have to. That night, for the first time since the accident, David opened the box filled with Yuki's belongings. The pain had been too great to even look at her things. But now, he needed to know about her past. Inside the box were her journals, photos, and a few keepsakes. He carefully opened a journal. The first few pages were filled with the giddy excitement of when they first met. Her honest words describing how happy she was with him. But as he turned the pages, he found a mention of Thorne. Marcus contacted me again. I wish he would just stop. I wish he wouldn't try to ruin what I have with David. Reading that single passage felt like a punch to the gut. Yuki was being harassed? Why hadn't she told him? He read on, and the entries grew more disturbing. Marcus was waiting for me outside my office today. The look in his eyes has changed. It scares me. Should I tell David? But I don't want him to worry. I'm sure I can handle this on my own. David dropped the journal and covered his face with his hands. He couldn't bear the thought of Yuki suffering alone, while he had remained completely oblivious. The final entry was written just before the accident. Marcus said something threatening. He said he would hurt David and Leo. I can't take this anymore. I'm going to the police tomorrow. I have to protect my family. David couldn't hold back his tears. Yuki's death wasn't an accident. She had died trying to protect them. The next morning, he called Detective Miller. Detective, I need you to reopen my wife's case. He told him about the contents of the journal. Can you bring the journal in immediately? Miller responded, his tone urgent. This could be a crucial piece of evidence. That afternoon, David dropped Leo off at daycare and drove to the precinct. After examining the journal, Detective Miller's face was grim. Mr. Chen, we are officially reopening your wife's death as a homicide investigation. We need to re-examine Thorne's alibi. Thank you, Detective. David nodded. He drove home with a heavy heart, but also with a glimmer of hope that the truth would finally be revealed. When he opened his apartment door, Ghost was there to greet him. David hugged the dog tightly. You truly are a special dog, he said. Maybe Yuki sent you to us. In that moment, an idea struck him. He remembered the animal shelter where he had adopted Ghost. He immediately called them. Hello, my name is David Chen. I adopted a Great Pyrenees named Ghost a few months ago. I was wondering if you had any information about his previous owner. The shelter employee checked their records. Yes, I have it right here. Ghost was the dog of a woman who passed away in a traffic accident. Her name is listed as Yuki Chen. David nearly dropped the phone. Ghost was Yuki's dog. She had been keeping him secretly, probably to protect herself from Thorne's threats. When did she get him? According to our records, about a year before the accident. We took him in shortly after she passed. David thanked the employee and hung up. He stared at Ghost, who stared back at him with his calm, knowing eyes. Everything suddenly made sense. Why Ghost was so fiercely protective of Leo. He was fulfilling Yuki's final wish. Ghost. David's voice choked. Yuki sent you, didn't she, to protect us? That night, David decided to tell Leo a small part of the truth, in a way a child could understand. Leo, he said softly, Ghost is a special present that Mommy sent to us from heaven. Leo's eyes widened. Mommy is always watching over us. David continued, and she sent Ghost to help protect us. Leo looked at Ghost, then slowly reached out and stroked his head. Mommy sent you, he whispered. Thank you, Ghost. The big white dog, as if understanding, thumped his tail and gently licked Leo's hand. Watching them, warm tears streamed down David's face. In the midst of deep pain, a new bond was being forged. The next day, Detective Miller called. A re-examination of Yuki's accident scene had revealed something suspicious. Mr. Chen, we've found evidence that your wife's brakes were tampered with. It's highly likely it was intentional. David took a deep breath. Was it Thorne? We can't be certain yet. But we rechecked his alibi. We now have a witness who places him near the scene on the day of the accident. David clenched his fists. The suspicion that Yuki had been murdered was now almost a certainty. He thought of his wife's final moments, and his heart felt like it would break. We need more evidence, Miller said. Mr. Chen, are there any other files Yuki left behind? Emails, text messages? David thought for a moment. Her laptop and cell phone. I haven't touched them since the accident. Can we have a look at them? There might be a critical clue left behind. David agreed. After the call, he retrieved Yuki's laptop from storage. When he turned it on, a password screen appeared. He tried their wedding anniversary, Leo's birthday, every date he could think of. But nothing worked. Then, an idea came to him. The place Yuki had loved. The cafe where they had their first date. He typed in Starlight Cafe. The laptop quietly booted up. The desktop background was a photo of David, Yuki, and a newborn Leo. The memory of those happy days cut him like a knife. He checked Yuki's email. Among countless work-related messages, he found one from an unfamiliar address. The subject line was simply, warning. He opened it. The message was short. Yuki, stop this. If you keep ignoring me, I can't guarantee what will happen to David and Leo. This is your last chance. The email was dated the day before Yuki's accident. David immediately called Detective Miller. Detective, I've found something. Miller acted fast. The email address was traced and confirmed to belong to Marcus Thorne. Other messages they uncovered painted a clear picture of how relentlessly Thorne had stalked and threatened Yuki. A week later, the final piece of evidence fell into place. A security camera from a nearby building captured footage of Thorne acting suspiciously near Yuki's car. Combined with the forensic evidence, the police finally had enough to arrest and charge him with the murder of Yuki Chen. When David heard the news, he was filled with a complex mix of emotions. Relief that the truth was out, but also a profound guilt for not knowing the danger Yuki had been in. That evening, he and Leo were looking at a photo of Yuki. Daddy, Mommy was really pretty, Leo said. Yes, she was, David replied. She was very pretty, and she was a very brave person. Brave. It was too soon to tell Leo the whole truth. Mommy was always brave, trying to protect us, just like Ghost. Leo looked at Ghost. He protected me from the bad man. Yes, he did. Ghost is a very special dog. After Leo fell asleep, David stood on the balcony and looked up at the night sky. Even with Chicago's city lights, a few stars shone brightly. Yuki, he whispered, I understand now. I know how hard you were trying to protect us. I'll take it from here. I'll protect Leo, and Ghost will be right here with us. Ghost came and stood beside him, nuzzling his hand. Together, they looked up at the sky. David felt as if, somewhere out there, Yuki was watching over them. The trial began. David was called to testify. That morning, he got up earlier than usual and put on a suit. Daddy, why are you wearing such a fancy outfit? Leo asked over breakfast. David struggled with how to explain. Daddy has something important to do today. You're going to spend the day with Aunt Amy. Okay? Leo was delighted. I can play with her dog. Of course, and Ghost can go with you. He dropped Leo and Ghost off at the home of Yuki's sister, Amy. Since the incident, Amy had become an even stronger source of support for David. It's going to be okay, David, she reassured him. The truth is finally coming out. Thank you, Amy. Please take good care of Leo. At the courthouse, David took his seat with a nervous heart. A short while later, Marcus Thorne was led into the courtroom. For the first time, David came face to face with the man who had destroyed his family. Thorne's eyes were still filled with a twisted anger and resentment. During the trial, David testified about Yuki's journal and emails. His voice shook as he described the fear she must have felt, and the courage she mustered to protect her family. "I had no idea my wife was carrying this burden alone," he said, his voice choking. "If I had known, I would have protected her." The prosecutor asked, "Did the defendant threaten your family recently?" "Yes, he broke into our home and tried to harm my son. If it wasn't for our dog, Ghost." From the defendant's box, Thorne suddenly let out a mocking laugh. "That dog, that's the dog Yuki was always with. Funny, isn't it?" The courtroom erupted in murmurs, and the judge quickly ordered Thorne to be silent. But David had heard the words. The time Ghost had spent with Yuki might have been longer than he thought. The trial lasted for several weeks. In the end, Marcus Thorne was found guilty of murder and home invasion. He was sentenced to life in prison. After the verdict, David drove to Amy's house. He found Leo and Ghost playing happily in the yard. Hearing his son's carefree laughter made his heavy heart feel a little lighter. Leo ran up and threw his arms around him. David held him tight. "It's all over now, Leo. Everything's going to be okay." That night, for the first time in a long time, David slept peacefully, but in his dreams, Yuki appeared. "I'm so sorry I couldn't tell you," she said. In the dream, David reached for her hand, but his fingers grasped only empty air. "Yuki, if only I had paid more attention." She smiled gently. And about Ghost? When David woke up, the room was still dim, but moonlight streamed through the window, faintly illuminating the space. Ghost was sitting quietly by his bed. "Did you have a dream too, boy?" Ghost moved closer and rested his head in David's hand. As David stroked the dog's fur, he knew what he had to do. He had to make a fresh start. For Leo, and for himself. A few days later, he told Amy his plans. "I quit my job. I'm going to start freelancing. Something I can do from home." Amy nodded. "You'll be able to spend more time with Leo." And David hesitated for a moment. "I'm going to look for a new house. This place, it just has too many memories." Amy looked at him with understanding. "If that's what you've decided, I'll help you. A new environment might be good for Leo, too." A month later, David found a new home in a quiet Chicago suburb. It was a single-story house with a small yard where Leo could run freely and Ghost could enjoy the space. On moving day, they took one last look at their old apartment. David stood before a photo of Yuki for a long time. "Mommy, we're going to our new house now," Leo said. "Ghost is coming too." David stroked his son's head. "Mommy will always be with us, no matter where we go." Life in the new house gradually found a stable rhythm. David's freelance work was successful, and Leo quickly adapted to his new kindergarten. Ghost remained their faithful guardian, always by their side. One evening, David was watching Leo and Ghost play in the yard. Leo's bright laughter filled the air. A soft breeze blew past, and for a moment, David thought he could smell Yuki's perfume. "Are you watching, Yuki?" he asked in his heart. "We're doing okay, Leo, me, and Ghost." Just then, Ghost's ears perked up, and he looked up at the sky. David followed his gaze. The sunset was painting the sky in beautiful colors, and the first star of the evening had appeared. "Look, Daddy, a star," Leo shouted, pointing. David smiled. "That's right, that's Mommy, watching over us." That night, David felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in a long time. Yuki was no longer physically with them, but her love lived on, through Ghost, and through Leo's smile. A year passed, and Leo started elementary school. David did everything he could to help his son adjust. Ghost would walk Leo to the school gate every morning and, without fail, would be waiting for him when school let out. "Daddy, all my friends love Ghost," Leo said one day after school. "My teacher said he's a special dog." David smiled. "He really is special." "How does Ghost know how to find me?" Leo asked. "He's always there right on time." David thought about it. He had wondered the same thing. Ghost couldn't read a clock, yet he always arrived at the exact moment school was dismissed. "Maybe Ghost has a special power," he answered. That evening, while cleaning Ghost's collar, David found something strange. A tiny, hidden pocket had been sewn into the inner lining. Inside was a small, folded piece of paper. He carefully unfolded it. On it, in Yuki's handwriting, were the words, "To my love. If I'm gone, Ghost will protect our family. I will love you forever. Yuki." David's hand trembled. It was a message from Yuki. Had she already known what was going to happen to her? He clutched the note to his chest, unable to stop the tears. The next day, he called Amy. "Amy, did Yuki ever say anything special about Ghost?" There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Actually, Amy said finally, just before she died, she told me something once. She said Ghost had a special ability. A special ability? She said Ghost could sense danger. And that he could see spiritual things. David was speechless. She said sometimes it looked like Ghost was communicating with something I couldn't see. Amy continued, I didn't really believe it at first. But David's mind raced through all the recent events. Ghost sensing the intruder under the bed. Ghost always arriving at the right time to pick up Leo. The way he would sometimes stare at an empty space. His tail wagging gently. Thank you, Amy, he said. I think I'm starting to understand. That night, David sat in the yard with Ghost. The sky was filled with stars. Can you talk to her? Boy, can you talk to Yuki? Ghost looked at him and let out a single, soft bark. A moment later, his gaze shifted to the empty space right next to David. In that instant, David felt a strange sensation. A warmth, as if someone was sitting right beside him. A gentle breeze brushed against his cheek. Ghost continued to look at that empty space, his tail wagging calmly. From that day on, David saw Ghost in a new light. He wasn't just a dog, he was a precious link connecting them to Yuki. Leo, too, had developed a special bond with him. Daddy, Leo said one day, sometimes when I'm with Ghost, I feel like Mommy is right here next to us. She is, son, David replied. She's always with us, through Ghost. Time went on, Leo grew up strong and brave. And Ghost aged gracefully, but the dog's loyalty and protective instincts never faded. One day, when Leo got lost on his way home from school, Ghost appeared out of nowhere and guided him safely home. Ghost just showed up. Daddy, Leo reported excitedly. I didn't know which way to go. And he led me home. David looked at Ghost. The dog's eyes were filled with a deep wisdom and love. He stroked his head and whispered, Thank you, Yuki. That evening, David and Leo sat in front of Yuki's photograph. Mommy must have loved us so much to send us Ghost, Leo said. David hugged his son tightly. Her love is bigger than words can ever say. That's why we have to keep that love in our hearts. Always. That night, David looked out the window at the stars. The Chicago sky was clear, glittering with countless points of light. He found the brightest one and smiled. We're okay, Yuki, thanks to the guardian you sent us. We're going to be okay. Ghost quietly came and rested at his feet. As David stroked his warm fur, he thought to himself that sometimes, even in the darkest night, there is light, and sometimes, that light comes from the most unexpected places, in the most unexpected forms. Like a miracle named Ghost.